We were joined by Kevin Dale, who was an anti-poll tax activist here in Brighton in the early 90s. He was a member then of the militant tendency, the forerunner of the Socialist Party, and he played a key role in the campaign against the poll tax at that time. With the poll tax was a flat tax that was charged against everyone, didn't take account of whether you're rich or poor, and it disproportionately affected the poor as a result. As a result of a mass non-payment campaign organised by the Anti-Poll Tax Federation as well as others, then the poll tax was defeated. So Kev's going to talk a bit about his experiences during that struggle.
Well, the main thing about the poll tax and the campaign was that we brought the slogan "Can't pay, won't pay," and the reason for that was militant at the time realised that there would be millions of people who just couldn't afford to pay the poll tax, and there was those as well that wouldn't pay as a matter of principle. So what we tried to do was combine those two elements and really create a campaign that would try and push the trade unions into taking some action. But what we quickly realised is the campaign itself developed at such a rate that it was possible that the campaign alone could defeat the poll tax, and of course indeed it did. And here in Brighton, we faced a Labour council that was preparing to send bailiffs in to take people's possessions. They said that they would do it in a nice and careful way, but at the end result was the same. They were going to send bailiffs in to take people's possessions if they didn't pay. And in Brighton we did a massive campaign of non-payment, which included things, for instance, like burning poll tax bills outside the town hall, which we did, and hundreds of people turned up and burnt their bills. We built on the estates around Morescoon, Wathill, Collingdean, all the different areas, and linked up poll tax federations to one big poll tax federation. Myself, I was working in Brighton Council at the time. I hadn't long started there, and one of my jobs was actually to look after the poll tax office, which was kept very, very secret because they didn't want anybody knowing exactly where it was. And of course I didn't let too many people know exactly where it was, and had to deal with the bailiffs up there. I took great delight in winding up day in, day out. And we had a big demonstration down at the level, probably one of the best attended in the times. And I mentioned at the time that the bailiffs were actually too scared to go into the estates to actually seize people's goods. And I said it because it was absolutely true. And the truth was, in Brighton, we defeated the poll tax as it was defeated nationally, and the bailiffs were too scared to go into those areas, and they never actually went in and seized any goods because they knew early on that the campaign was building and building, and people couldn't pay and they wouldn't pay. Unfortunately, the Labour Party not only were running councils up and down the country that were sending in bailiffs, their opposition to the council tax was absolutely minimal. The TUC as well had a campaign which was called Stop It. It was very little other than saying we should stop the tax, we should disrupt the registration process, but offered no real means of going forward. The Labour Party argued all we should do is wait until there's a Labour government, and then the Labour government could scrap the poll tax. We realised early on you cannot just wait for a Labour government. So what we did is we built a campaign, and millions of people joined it, and ultimately, only did we defeat the poll tax, but we brought Thatcher down along with it as well.
So what was the attitude of the rest of the left, really? I mean, what was your experience as part of militant fighting for the policy of non-payment?
Well, it was clear early on that the Labour Party wasn't going to do anything. We knew that, so somebody had to take a lead, and it was militant that took the lead. The Socialist Workers' Party itself got itself into a bit of a state about what they were going to do. They identified that, as we did, that the trade unions should play a leading part. But where we were absolutely clear, once the campaign had taken off, was that the trade unions weren't going to move into action over this. For instance, the main union, which was NowGo at the time, did have a strike. I was on it, but we were striking over pay. We weren't striking over poll tax. We recognised that the campaign itself was going to be able to do something. The SWP actually wrote that community politics was a diversion, that would go down the wrong road, that only roads was the trade unions, completely misjudging what should happen. So they got it wrong, no surprise. But all we did really was tap into a mood that we knew would exist, which was that people physically could not pay. There wasn't money to pay the tax. People could not afford it. So in many ways it wasn't rocket science, but it did take organisation. It did mean going out and explaining to people on the estates, talking to people, having meetings, and giving people the confidence also not to pay was another major thing. Of course, one person refusing to pay a tax, or a few people refusing to pay a tax, can easily be attacked and can easily be taken through the courts. But thousands, millions of people not paying was another thing. And Kinnock, who was leader of the Labour Party at the time, said the idea of a mass non-payment is a complete non-starter. It would never happen. It was impossible. People didn't have the confidence. It just couldn't happen. So we realised early on it could. It would take organisation. It would take a campaign, and that's what we did.
So you're a member of the PCS union, the Civil Service Union, and you're going to be coming out on strike in only 2 days now, in the November the 30th strike against pension cuts. Now, many people, when we talk about the poll tax, say, well, that's brilliant. The campaign was fantastic. It prevented that tax from existing, but it was only one thing, one tax that you could refuse to pay. The problem is that with the current struggle against the cuts, then there's many other fronts that you have to fight on, and you can't just refuse to have your services cut. How would you respond to that?
Well, I think first point on that is on the poll tax itself. To refuse not to pay the tax, to say I'm not paying this tax, wasn't an easy thing, even with the mass campaign of non-payment. I think that has to be clear, that we were in an unprecedented situation where not paying a tax for the first time could result in your wages being taken. It could result in bailiffs turning up at your door and taking your goods. And actually, early on particularly, people were really frightened. And we're talking about old age pensions, we're talking about people on benefits, we're talking about a whole range, all of society. People were very frightened. And the confidence for them to do something about it was what was needed. And that's very much the same in today's struggle. Yes, it is different in that there is no one single thing, but we still have to build up people's confidence on every single thing, every issue that we have. So if it's a cuts to libraries, if it's cuts in different services, if it's a tax on welfare benefits, it's about giving people the confidence to go, we're going to oppose these. And every victory that we can have builds that overall confidence. And I see this as an overall, where are the cuts coming from? They're coming from this Conservative government, and we need to oppose them. But we also need to be looking to the alternative. What is the alternative to the Conservative government? Do we want to go through all these cuts again and end up with another Labour government that, for me as a PCS member, it was Gordon Brown who first said he was going to cut 100,000 civil servants, more than the Tories are cutting at present. So I don't want that back. So it's about building confidence, but it's also about building an alternative, and that's why I'm in the Socialist Party, and that's why I think people need to start campaigning for a new Workers' Party, and one that represents them.
So what do you think is going to happen on November the 30th and afterwards?
I think November 30th will be one of the biggest strikes that we've seen since 1926, and it will give workers massive confidence when they go back into their workplaces. But the key thing is to escalate the action immediately. What we don't want is union leaders then going back and thinking, well, we've had the 1 day of strike. There's a contradiction. The government is saying negotiations are ongoing, but they're also saying this is a final offer. So you can't negotiate on a final offer that we've already rejected. So it is about going back into the workplaces, building. We've got to escalate the action, 48-hour strike, and we need to look beyond that and build more strikes until this has been defeated.
Well, thanks very much, Kevin. If you're interested in finding out more about the Socialist Party, click on the link underneath the video. Thank you.